This is an extremely special and significant episode of the Economic War Room. We're racing in, literally. I've got Mike Carter with me. Mike Carter is my co-host on Pirate Money Radio. He's been traveling with me. We have been across the United States. We've testified in Kansas, Oklahoma, Utah, Florida, Texas, all in the past couple of weeks. And I've traveled from Tallahassee to Tyler and Abilene to Silicon Valley. So it's covered the entirety of the country. And we've got excellent news to report, but also action items. We need our listening audience and viewing audience to jump on board and help us make transactional gold and silver a reality. Now, we know the background, and let's start with that. Mike, why do people want, first off, tell us what that is. What is it when we're talking about transactional gold and silver?
Transactional gold is simply taking advantage of states' constitutional rights in Article 1, Section 10 to make gold and silver legal tender. And then specifically what we're able to do now with modern day technology is make that functional currency or functional money. You know, up until now, several states have had, I think there's about 6 states now that have gold and silver as legal tender. But what can you do with it? Because you can't spend a gold coin. But what you can do is take part of that money, part of your money, put it in a bullion depository authorized by a state, and attach a debit card to it and spend gold and silver anywhere that you spend MasterCard. It's seamless, it's transactional, the retailer doesn't even know the difference, but the advantage is you've got money that's holding a stable, steady store of value, something that keeps up with inflation. It's another way to pay. It's the fintech opportunity for today that I think our founders brilliantly put in the Constitution that said states can do this. They can have money as long as it's backed by gold and silver.
Now, they had no idea that this was coming, but they did have this. The dollar that our founders put in the Constitution was a Spanish mill dollar. The reason they chose it was also known as a piece of 8. You could cut a silver coin up into 8 pie-shaped wedges. Those were each known as a bit, and you could spend them. So that was an opportunity to make silver transactional, and that was the intention. So in Article 1, Section 10, the founders wrote gold and silver coins are the only thing a state could make. And they wrote that there because they knew the federal government might go off the rails someday and do this horrible thing that they warned us against. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. I think Thomas Jefferson said paper is poverty. George Washington says it's going to open the door to every form of fraud and injustice. Hamilton said, don't go to paper money. It'll ruin your commerce, ruin the economy. Same thing, the authors of the Constitution, the authors of the Declaration, the first Treasury Secretary warned us against what we're facing now, which is $37 trillion of federal debt. That's why this is kind of an emergency session of Economic War Room, but it's also a good news reporting session. So, Mike, we've been visiting. You've been out among the people and the legislators and the, high-end Wall Street types. What are people saying about this as an idea to go back to what the Constitution said and let states make gold and silver transactional and useful as money? What do people feel?
Well, if you look at just the consumer in general, or the citizens, I mean, when they hear about this, they're like, what? You can actually do this? First of all, it's kind of hard for them to understand until you actually see it being done. And for example, I paid an Uber driver with gold the other day, and he was like, I had no idea this was out there. How do I get more information? How do I find out more about it? Once they see that, it's as simple as using a debit card, but now I'm spending gold. But more importantly, what they see is, as inflation continues to rise, that account going up, their money that's in the gold is keeping value, and they see the dollar losing its value. Like, I need to have another way to pay. I need to have this optionality.
Yeah, no, we've got that. I mean, last night you were with me in the car. I called my wife and I said, hey, wait, why? We have a MasterCard that's got gold behind it. It's offered by a company out of the United Kingdom. The gold is in Switzerland. But I noticed she was on Amazon and she was buying some stuff. And I said, why are you using that card? You're spending my gold. And she apologized and said, well, give me another card to use. Okay, so the spending's going to happen regardless. Sometimes I use US dollars. Sometimes I use gold. I like having that option, and it works beautifully.
Yeah, the dollar, we believe the dollar, it's a unit of measure, right? It's an easy unit of exchange. It's not been a great store of value out there. But things are going to continue to be measured in dollars. But it's kind of nice to have some separate money, some ready money set aside in gold that's keeping up with that inflation. It's always there for your own personal rainy day fund or your personal gold currency status out there. So.
Let me bring this down to a real practical level. Imagine we were 5 years ago and COVID was just beginning, and you got your money from the government, you got a $1,000 bonus at work, or you got some money to help deal with COVID, and you put that $1,000 into a regular checking account and use your debit card on it, and you wanted to get that one last meal out to eat at a fast casual before they shut everything down, and so you took your family out. It was about $10 a piece. I looked it up. $10 for a family of four is $40. That's what you'd pay. That was the price of a meal. You fast forward to today, that same meal costs about $60, about $15 a piece. We've had 50% inflation in fast casual restaurants over the past 5 years. What if I'd put that $1,000 in gold? That would have bought me, at the time, a half an ounce of gold. And if I wanted to go spend that, I would have spent 1/50th of an ounce of gold to go out for my meal. Now, what if I saved it in gold over the 5 years? What would the meal cost today? $60. $60, that's the cost in US dollars. In gold, it's still 1/50th of an ounce of gold, because gold is now $3,000 an ounce divided by 50. That's the $60 to pay for the meal. All of that's great until I get the surprise bill at the end after the check. It's, oh, I forgot to include tip. And then they have, oh, there's one more bill. The United States government wants, get this, for every time you eat out, fast casual, family of four, they want $5.60 if you put the money in gold 5 years ago and you spend it today.
So they're taxing inflation.
They're taxing inflation. It's capital gains tax on inflation. And that is the why we need to do this. Unless you believe inflation is going to diminish over the next several years, Mike, do you think it's going to go away?
Well, I think the question is, the government going to stop printing money?
Well, I don't see how they can.
If they keep printing the money, I think inflation is going to continue to happen. So yes, I think we need to have another way to pay, some optionality there.
So we look at gold prices and we compare gold prices to the increasing national debt, and they almost perfectly correlated. You'll just see, I mean, there's bouncing around, but they always end up in the same place. The more debt the federal government produces, the higher gold prices have tended to go. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. There's no way to predict the future. But this is why it's such a special economic war room episode, because we have a way to make it to where you could have that inflation protection, but not have to worry about the government tax that comes at the end. All right, Mike, we're going to have to take a break. When we come back, let's talk about, name some of the states where this is advancing.
Oh, we're seeing Utah, Texas, Florida, Oklahoma, Arkansas. I hate to start listing West Virginia, called the other day. So things are happening, but the big states, things are significantly happening. We're excited about it.
All right, you can follow us at transactionalgold.com. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll dive into exactly what's happening and what you can do with it. In uncertain times, finding stability in the economy can feel challenging. But what if you could navigate economic volatility while honoring your biblical values? At Timothy Plan, they believe this balance is possible. Timothy Plan filters its volatility-weighted ETFs and family of mutual funds through a biblical pro-life and pro-family lens, so you can see competitive returns and moral responsibility, helping you to weather the economic storms. With Timothy Plan, align your investments with your values while adapting to our ever-changing culture. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has been recognized leader in biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, your bridge between faith, finances, and the future. Visit timothyplan.com or call 1-800-TIM-PLAN or 1-800-846-7526. Investing includes risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Here's a $10 bill. It's got the picture of Alexander Hamilton on the front of it. You know, it's kind of sad. When I was 10 years old, everything that I could buy for $1 now costs about $10. That's the cost of inflation. It's just paper. It's not backed by anything. You can't exchange it for gold and silver. You used to, but you can't do that anymore. And that's unfortunate. You know, pirates wouldn't accept this. Pirates, they wanted gold and silver. Patriots, the founders of this nation, also wanted gold and silver coin. In fact, they put a provision in the Constitution, 17 words, that said states could only make gold and silver coins tender within the states. That's why I wrote this new book, Pirate Money, Discovering the Founders' Hidden Plan for Economic Justice and Defeating the Great Reset. It will explain exactly the history of money and exactly why gold and silver coins can be made modern with new technology and a useful monetary system. PirateMoneyBook.com. All right, we're with Mike Carter. Mike, we're talking about all the advances. One legislation that made it through the House and the Senate is something written by our dear friend, Representative Ken Ivory out of Utah. He's been at the Liberty Hawk Ranch multiple times. He's been in the Economic War Room on the shows. He's been on Pirate Money Radio. Even the day after he got his legislation passed, we were celebrating with him. He loves eating ice cream, so we had special Ken Ivory vanilla ice cream ready for him.
Ken's been to 3 of our summits now, and he is an expert on this topic, and he's doing phenomenal things in his state.
And he was a part of the original legal tender law in 2011. Now, states say, well, we'll just make it legal tender. A lot of states are saying that. Well, why don't we just do the easy thing and make it legal tender? That didn't do any good for the citizens of Utah, not without the most current legislation.
You've got to have a way to do something with that, because once it's legal tender and you go to any store out there and you bring your gold or your silver, you're going to get the face value of that silver dollar, but it's worth, what, $30 now?
Yeah, $35, yeah.
$35.
Substantially
You're not going to
more.
get $35 for it. So nobody's going to spend that. That's not economically prudent. But the ability to have gold or silver in an account and attach a debit card to it, and I can get my $35 of value out of that silver. And if it goes to 40, I get $40 of value. You know, we had originally we did a corporate card where we had $600 on that when we first started with gold. We demonstrated how it could be spent. We bought meals for folks, showed them. We spent about $300 of that. And in about 6 or 7 months' time, we looked at the balance. So 600 minus 300 should have $300. We had a $450 balance on our gold card. What happened? The value dollar went down, gold went up.
Okay, people can't easily buy gold. That's part of the problem. Is there are a lot of gold dealers, and some of them great, and some of them not so great. But you don't know what to do with it when you buy it. You go to Costco, so you figure I can trust Costco. If they're selling me a gold bar, it's a gold bar. The problem is once you buy it, you can't take it back and spend it.
Right. And we hear that all the time. We've seen even articles where people bought the gold at Costco, and Costco's got a great business model. They're probably, I think everything in the store is roughly 7% flat fee. They make money off the memberships. But you want to spend that gold nugget you just bought, you can't do it. You want to take it back, you can't do that either. So now you got to go to a broker or somebody else.
Pawn shop.
Come to an agreement of, okay, what's this worth? How do I do it? So what happens? That gold just gets stored away in a drawer someday for, well, if I need this someday, it's there. But it's not moving the economy. There's no velocity out there. It's sitting there with, well, at least I have this for someday. We want gold to be transactional. We want gold to be...
You can't use it in an emergency if you have to then go find a buyer and all that. All right, so what Utah did, and their legislation is historic, first in the nation, and there are a lot of articles being written about this, and we were part of it. I was a part of the Utah study group and so forth. But Ken Ivory, Representative Ivory, is the one who promoted it. We've got a clip from him when he was testifying about this. Let's hear what Representative Ivory said about this historic legislation.
It simply allows a state vendor or service provider to choose to receive payment in gold from the state instead of dollars. And for the state, all it means is setting up another account like a bank account. There are a number of service providers, a couple of them are here and online that can speak to this, but the state can push dollars, the recipient receives gold. And so they're able to have gold that's immediately stored, secured, audited, and the other things that are in the bill. And that really is the simplicity of the bill, but it provides a foundation that we build on as we look to store the value of the earnings and savings of the state and of the people of the state.
So basically they're making gold money, and that's an incredible step because they're going to find a vendor who can process those electronic payments, which would be like you used in your debit card or I use in my debit card. If the state makes it money and makes it legal tender, and you put those two things together, you essentially have an exemption from capital gains tax potentially, because the only reason the IRS is able to tax gold is they call it a collectible, not if it's money made by the state.
Yeah, in this case, we're, again, using modern technology, the state, very little fiscal note on this thing. The state can easily say, okay, we're going to pay in dollars and pay those vendors in gold.
And what we can do here is something Marla Oaks, the treasurer of Utah, has made possible. We've got a couple of clips. Let's roll those clips from Treasurer Marla Oaks.
I really appreciate Representative Ivory's work on this issue. As directed by HB 348 in last session, we conducted a study and created a report, the Precious Metals Study, and had several meetings over the course of last year and looked at one of the key components was this transactional platform. And so really that's kind of the basis of what we're talking about with HB 306. The platform could facilitate real-time transactions, dollar conversions, and secure gold storage in Utah under strict safety standards. Several precious metals workgroup members and presenters in meetings highlighted that a state-utilized gold-based transactional platform could offer citizens an alternative payment system, helping to safeguard their purchasing power against the erosion caused by inflation more effectively than reliance on the dollar alone. For a century and a half, gold was money in the United States. However, in 1974, the IRS, by policy, not by law or constitutional amendment, began taxing gold and silver as a capital asset and not as a currency. This means if an individual buys gold, whether in the form of coins, bars, or through a gold-based exchange-traded fund, any gain made when selling that gold, even if only because the value of the dollar went down, is subject to capital gains tax. Furthermore, gold is considered a collectible under IRS policy, subjecting it to the highest capital gains tax rate in the United States. For those who would use gold as money, this tax makes the proposition less attractive. If an individual experiences an increase in the value of their gold holdings and then chooses to transact using that gold, they are currently subject to capital gains tax on the appreciated value. This creates a barrier to using gold on a frequent transactional basis, since each transaction creates a taxable event. This is why advocates for gold-based platforms push for changes to capital gains tax treatment on gold. If gold were fully recognized as money, it should not be subject to capital gains tax.
Thank you. My name is Marlo Oaks. I'm the state treasurer here in Utah. In last session, we conducted a study and created a report, the precious metals study, and looked at one of the key components was this transactional platform. And so really that's kind of the basis of what we're talking about with HB 306. The platform could facilitate real-time transactions, dollar conversions, and secure gold storage in Utah under strict safety standards. Several precious metals workgroup members and presenters in meetings highlighted that a state-utilized gold-based transactional platform could offer citizens an alternative payment system, helping to safeguard their purchasing power against the erosion caused by inflation more effectively than reliance on the dollar alone.
Okay.
Because the U.S.
That is essentially what I participated in that work group. That is what the Economic War Room is doing on your behalf, making it possible, constitutional, legal, practical, for you to protect and preserve your purchasing power. No other show does this. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with the solution. Here's a $10 bill. It's got the picture of Alexander Hamilton on the front of it. You know, it's kind of sad. When I was 10 years old, everything that I could buy for $1 now costs about $10. That's the cost of inflation. It's just paper. It's not backed by anything. You can't exchange it for gold and silver. You used to, but you can't do that anymore. And that's unfortunate. You know, pirates wouldn't accept this. Pirates, they wanted gold and silver. Patriots, the founders of this nation, also wanted gold and silver coin. In fact, they put a provision in the Constitution, 17 words, that said states could only make gold and silver coins tender within the states. That's why I wrote this new book, Pirate Money, Discovering the Founders' Hidden Plan for Economic Justice and Defeating the Great Reset. It will explain exactly the history of money and exactly why gold and silver coins can be made modern with new technology and a useful monetary system. PirateMoneyBook.com.
Washington said paper money opens the door to every species of fraud and injustice. Jefferson said paper is poverty. Hamilton said to emit an unfunded paper as the sign of value ought not to continue a formal part of the Constitution. The founders hated paper money, so they put a pirate money clause in the Constitution for our state to use. Learn more at transactionalgold.com.
This is a debit card, MasterCard. It's tied to a depository in Switzerland, and it has gold in it. I load it up. I put any amount I want in there, $5, 5 cents, 5 million, whatever. And whenever I buy gold and put it in the depository, it's at spot price. I take that and I can buy gas, I can buy groceries, I can buy whatever I want with it. and that makes it spendable, which makes it money. And I think that's the key. What we've got here, three attorneys general have written that they believe that since if you can spend it like money, then it becomes money, and it shouldn't be taxed at all. And so that's kind of the way this is going. Historically as well, gold and silver has been something that the wealthy could store away and could kind of hedge against inflation, but the average person cannot. You go down to the coin store or to a pawn shop or whatever like that, and you buy some gold or silver, and you take it home, put it in a shoebox under your bed or a safe or something like that. And then when you need to liquidate it, you've got to go back and through that process again. The nice thing about this is, think about a single mom who could put $25 a week, $25 a month, whatever, in this account. It'll hold its value against inflation.
All right, Mike, you've been working with formerly Representative Mike Murphy in Kansas. He's our chocolate guy, right? He had chocolate ice cream. We've got Ken Ivory with the vanilla. But you've been working with him. He gave that testimony just recently. What was the impact? What happened in Kansas?
Well, in Kansas, we saw, it was interesting that these things don't always go easily. So some committees were blocking. He figured out a way, though. He's got a good pulse of what's going on with Kansans out there. Was able to get it moved through the Senate into committee. We passed the bill, gold and silver as legal tender, got rid of some state taxation issues, and included simple language that recognizes electronic gold and silver, transactional gold and silver as part of the legal tender process. So they can then participate with other states that are doing this and really sets up a precedent there. We got to get it done in the House, but passed in the Senate, and excited to see what's happening there. And now we've got Oklahoma next. We've had some bills passed there. Arkansas, we've been on phone discussions with them. They're moving this forward. So that whole kind of Midwest is picking up some steam right now. Yeah,
well, Representative Cody Maynard in Oklahoma, who we've had on the show and multiple times, I think on Pirate Money and maybe Economic War Room. But anyway, he advanced legislation, which is fantastic. He got it out of the House, needs to go to the Senate. Senator Murphy got it out of the Senate, needs to go to the House. They're all kind of watching and waiting, though, to see what the big two do. Yeah. The two, I remember meeting Ron DeSantis in Lynchburg, Virginia. He was speaking to the whole school. I spoke only to the School of Government, but they had a lunch they hosted for both of us. And he looked at me and he said, "That's a great idea. If Texas and Florida do this, it'll cover the country." Where are we in Texas and Florida? And this is where you need to step in and help. This is where we could use your help. Describe what happened in Florida. We were just in Tallahassee and then Austin.
Florida's been amazing. We spent over a week, actually over the weekend, back again in session for a panel.
And I'm going back again.
Yeah, you're back one more this next week as well. But really getting into all the key executive levels, key levels at the Senate, at the House, working with our analysts, the Office of Financial Regulation, all asking good questions to say, how do we lead with this in Florida? And how do we set up the right regulatory pieces to make sure the trust is there, that the right pieces are set up to make sure that this is a systemic system that Florida can really lead with. So I'm very encouraged by the questions they're asking, the process they're working through to make that happen there.
Well, I got to testify in that working group for the Senate Banking Committee. It was Treasurer Oaks and myself and the head of the Office Financial Regulation, and it was
the LBMA was there.
The lawyer for the LBMA talking about what a bullion depository should be like and the standards and so forth.
Purity of the gold, so that trust factor is there.
Yeah, so that was a great meeting, and I think we've got lots of good momentum there. We also have lots of good momentum in Texas, but there's still the naysayers. There's still the people who want to stop Americans from having money that they can count on, constitutional currency, mostly bankers and attorneys. And there's some great people that work for the banks, but just, it's new, we don't want to do this.
I would say it's banker associations, potentially, because this can be very good for the banks. In fact, Florida is looking at ways to make that banks be able to participate and differentiate their businesses from it. It's going to be awesome for those banks that understand it.
And Texas, too. Yeah. In Texas, in Florida, we've got to give a shout out to Representative Doug Bankson, who's also a pastor, and also Senator Ana Maria Rodriguez. Great bipartisan support there. And in Texas, we have bipartisan support. In fact, Representative Mark DeRazio, and we were just testifying, both you and I were called to testify. Representative DeRazio, with his HB 1056, has 80 co-signers, but there are still those who say, no, you can't do it, don't do it, slow it down or whatever. We cannot afford to wait for this. Mike, how do people get involved and make a difference helping promote this? Transactionalgold.com?
Yeah, you can get information on your state at transactionalgold.com, but I'd really encourage you to, especially those sessions that have active legislation right now, to call your state legislator, call your state senator and say,
and the governor office, lieutenant governor?
Yeah, but phone calls, emails work. Phone calls are even better because they can't avoid a ringing phone. And if you just call and say, hey, support this bill, or I want this transactional gold in my state, that makes a difference. And I say that specifically for Florida and Texas right now because we're actively engaged in the whole legislative process. If you live in Texas, if you live in Florida, call your state representative, call your state senator, call the executive levels and say, we want these bills passed. It's important to us. It's just another way to pay, and it is the answer to inflation.
Okay, Florida, HB 999, SB 132, Texas, HB 1056, and there's a companion on the Senate side.
Yeah, got a Senate Bill 2002 on the Senate side.
So we've got to get these things passed. This is our crucial moment. This is something that we have to do now because in Texas, they only meet once every 2 years. In Florida, they'll meet again. They'll start hearings this session for the 2026 session, like in September. But right now, this is your opportunity to make a real difference. It's why we created the Economic War Room. Are you facing inflation? Are you worried about being debanked? Are you worried about wokeness? And you say the wrong thing on the internet, they take your money away from you? Are you worried about the great taking? All of those things get solved. That's why I wrote the book, Pirate Money. It explains the answer to how we fix these problems. That's why Mike and I are spending so much time on the road meeting with state legislators. I can tell you my phone is ringing this morning while we're recording. People are saying, can you come to this state? Can you talk to us? Can you answer this question? We just need to have an army of you out there. Get educated. Get the book, Pirate Money. You can learn more at piratemoneybook.com. Go buy a copy. Buy 10 copies. Start spreading it around. Send copies to the legislature. Call them. Mike, you're so right about the phone call.
And I was going to say, this is about economic justice. This is about fair weights and measure. This is the one bill out there that has bipartisan support in this day and age. So you are seeing Republicans and Democrats get behind this idea.
All right, so what you got to do is get your free economic battle plan. You can get a copy at economicwarroom.com. Remember, what we see as a marketplace, our enemies, they view it as a battle space. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room. Go Pirate Money. Help us make this happen.